Have you ever walked into a room and felt it, without anyone saying a word, that one woman didn't just look attractive? She shifted the atmosphere, not because of her outfit, not because of a performance, something deeper, something that your body notices before your mind can explain it. And here's the unsettling part. That kind of intensity is rarely created by trying to be desired. It's created when a woman becomes psychologically integrated, when her inner energy stops leaking through fear, approval-seeking, and hidden shame, and starts gathering into presence. From a Jungian lens, what people call a sexual aura is not simply about sex. It's about libido in Jung's meaning, the life force of the psyche, creative energy, emotional power, instinct, will, vitality. Libido can express as desire, but it also expresses as focus, radiance, calm authority, intuition, and the ability to remain centered under attention. When this energy is scattered, you feel nervousness, inconsistency, and hunger. When it's contained and aligned, you feel gravity. And gravity is what keeps your attention locked, even when nothing obvious is happening. If you stay with me, you're going to understand why spiritually awakened women, meaning women who have begun the inner work of becoming whole, often carry an intensity that others interpret as sexual. It's not mystical fluff, it's psychological reality. The unconscious reads coherence as power, and power, when it's clean, reads as erotic. Jung would tell you that the psyche speaks in symbols, and attraction is one of its most powerful symbol systems. A woman's aura is not a special effect. It's the emotional and energetic signature of her inner relationship to herself. Most people unconsciously broadcast conflict. They want connection but fear intimacy. They crave attention but distrust it. They desire but feel guilty for desiring. That inner contradiction produces mixed signals: push-pull, hot-cold, seduce-withdraw. Your nervous system feels the noise, but a woman who has begun individuation, the process of becoming an integrated self, broadcasts something simpler: a clean signal, presence. And your unconscious is hypnotized by clean signals because they are rare. Now here's the part most people miss. Spiritual awakening in a Jungian sense is not about floating above the body. It's about descending into reality, into instinct, shadow, truth. Many people use spirituality as a way to dissociate, to appear peaceful while being internally fractured. But real awakening is integration. It's when a person stops splitting themselves into good parts and bad parts, and instead learns to hold their full nature without collapsing. That includes instinct, that includes desire, that includes the raw animal intelligence that civilization tries to polish out of you. A spiritually integrated woman doesn't become less embodied, she becomes more embodied. She doesn't escape her sexuality. She reclaims it from compulsion, from shame, from the need to manipulate or be validated. And when that happens, her energy changes. It becomes quieter, but stronger. Less performative, more real, less needy, more grounded. And paradoxically, that groundedness becomes intensely attractive. Jung spoke about the numinous, the feeling of encountering something that carries a sacred charge, not necessarily religious. Numinous means you feel it has power over you, it impresses you, it pulls you in, it creates fascination. And here's what's wild. The numinous can appear in people when their psyche is aligned. When someone is whole enough, your unconscious treats them like an archetype walking in human form. You don't just see them as a person, you feel what they represent. That's where aura comes from psychologically. You're not only responding to physical traits, you're responding to meaning. Your unconscious asks, what does this person embody? What energy does she carry? What part of life does she represent? And if her energy is coherent, if she isn't fragmented, your projections stick harder because there's less chaos in her to disrupt the image. A fragmented person sends mixed messages. An integrated person sends a unified frequency. Let's get very precise. There are two kinds of intensity people confuse. One is intensity from repression. This is the kind that feels edgy, compulsive, unstable. It can be seductive, but it's often exhausting. It has a nervous charge. It can create obsession because it triggers unresolved wounds. The other is intensity from integration. This is calm heat, still fire, a contained power that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't need to prove anything. It creates attraction not through tension, but through depth. And that's the sexual aura many awakened women carry. It's not loud, it's not trying, it's inevitable. Because when a woman integrates her shadow, her denied emotions, her anger, her hunger, her jealousy, her fear, she stops leaking energy through unconscious behaviors. She stops performing niceness while secretly resenting. She stops pretending to be low maintenance while craving reassurance. She stops using seduction as a tool to control outcomes. Instead, she becomes honest internally. And honesty does something to the body. It relaxes it. The eyes become clearer. The voice becomes steadier. Movements become more deliberate. Her nervous system stops broadcasting anxiety. That is not a small change. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for coherence. Coherence signals safety. Safety allows arousal. Arousal is not just lust, it's aliveness. So when you meet someone whose inner world is stable, your body can soften. And when your body softens, you feel drawn. That draw can feel like sexual magnetism because it is your life force responding to theirs. Jung also emphasized the difference between persona and self. The persona is the mask, who you think you must be to be accepted. Most attraction games are persona-based, curated, strategic, manipulative. But the self is deeper. It's the organizing center of the psyche, the wholeness beneath the mask. A spiritually awakened woman begins to disidentify from the persona. She stops acting like a brand. And when the mask thins, the self comes forward. That's when people say, I don't know what it is about her. Because what they're feeling is not the persona, it's the self. It's a kind of inner authority that doesn't shout. And here's a retention point to keep you locked in. The reason this feels sexual is because eros is not pornography. Eros is the principle of union. It's the force that draws life together, through intimacy, through creativity, through love, through beauty, through desire. When eros is wounded, it becomes manipulation. When eros is integrated, it becomes radiance. That radiance is felt as a field around the person, not supernatural, somatic. Now let's go deeper. Jung would say that what you fall for is often a projection. In a man, the inner feminine image, the anima, carries his relationship to emotion, intuition, creativity, and depth. When a man meets a woman who appears to embody those qualities, the anima projection ignites. Suddenly she seems mysterious, powerful, almost fated. But here's the twist. An awakened woman can intensify this because she is less reactive. She doesn't collapse into your projection. She holds her center. And the more she holds her center, the more your psyche tries to read her. That reading creates fascination. Fascination creates fixation. Fixation creates the feeling of aura. Because if she doesn't chase you, your ego can't categorize her as needy. If she doesn't seek validation, your ego can't feel superior. If she doesn't over-explain herself, your mind has gaps, and the mind hates gaps, so it fills them with meaning. That's a psychological mechanism, and it's one of the most powerful retention loops in human attention. The incomplete pattern. Awakened women often become incomplete patterns to people who are used to predictable emotional scripts. They're not cold, they're not distant, they're simply not easily controlled. And anything not easily controlled becomes fascinating. But I need to make this clear. This is not about playing hard to get. Jung would see games as shadow strategies, manipulations used to avoid vulnerability. Awakened magnetism is not a tactic. It's a byproduct of inner alignment. It's the energy of someone who can be alone without panic, someone who can be desired without becoming arrogant, someone who can love without losing herself. That balance is rare, and rarity creates value in the unconscious. A woman becomes spiritually awakened when she begins to relate to her inner life as real. She stops outsourcing her worth. She stops treating her emotions as inconveniences. She stops making her body a battlefield. She listens to her dreams. She recognizes her patterns. She confronts her shadow. She learns the art of holding tension without collapsing into impulsivity. Jung called this the transcendent function, the ability of the psyche to produce a third option when opposites are held consciously. Instead of either repressing desire or acting it out unconsciously, she can contain it, understand it, and choose. That capacity, choice, radiates power. And power plus softness is what people experience as sexual aura. Not aggressive power, not dominance. It's a quiet sovereignty. I feel everything, and I'm still here. Now let's talk about why her sexuality feels more intense. Because when sexuality is fused with the self, rather than the persona, it stops being transactional. It stops being a performance. It becomes expression. It becomes honest. The body senses honesty. You can't fake the nervous system forever. If your sexy is an act, your microsignals betray you. But if your sexy is simply your life force allowed to flow, then even silence becomes charged. And this is where many people get uncomfortable. Spiritual awakening often dissolves shame around instinct. Jung didn't romanticize instinct, but he respected it. He believed that what you repress doesn't disappear. It becomes autonomous. It possesses you. So an awakened woman doesn't repress her erotic energy, she integrates it. She stops being afraid of her own desire. And when a person stops being afraid of their own desire, they stop broadcasting apology. They stop shrinking. They stop seeking permission. That's why their eyes look different. Not prettier, different. There's less internal negotiation, less self-censorship, less inner commentary, and attention is the most erotic force there is. When a woman can look at you without trying to control your reaction, you feel seen. And being seen is arousing because it touches the core human hunger, recognition. But again, no examples of people, no stories. So let's keep it archetypal. The archetype here is the lover. Jung's work implies that the lover archetype is not just sexual appetite, it's devotion to life. It's the ability to be moved by beauty without becoming dependent on it. It's the ability to connect without losing boundaries. When the lover archetype is integrated, the person becomes luminous. When it is repressed, the person becomes rigid. When it is inflated, the person becomes compulsive. Awakened women often have integrated the lover with the queen, meaning eros with inner authority. That combination is what creates the aura people can't ignore, warmth plus spine. Here's a crucial psychological law: what you resist persists, what you accept transforms. Many women have been conditioned to either weaponize sexuality or fear it. Both are forms of resistance. Awakened women stop fighting their own nature. That doesn't mean indulgence. It means honest relationship. Jung would call this a conscious relationship to the instinctual psyche. And when the relationship becomes conscious, libido stops escaping through neurotic symptoms. Jealousy, control, attention hunger, self-sabotage. That energy returns to the body as vitality. Vitality is seductive, not because it screams sex, but because it screams life. And your unconscious is always pulled toward life. Now we need to speak about shadow attraction. Some men confuse awakened aura with danger because they have been trained by instability. If your nervous system associates attraction with chaos, then calm intensity feels unfamiliar. You might even mistrust it. You might think, what does she want? That question is the ego trying to regain control. But awakened aura doesn't have a hidden agenda. It's not trying to get something from you. And that is exactly what makes it feel intense. You can't bargain with it. Jung emphasized that the goal is wholeness, not goodness. An awakened woman is not necessarily nice. She is real. She can say yes without fear. She can say no without guilt. She can be affectionate without clinging. She can be sensual without performing. She can be spiritual without denying her body. And if you're used to women who either hide their desire or use it as currency, meeting someone who simply embodies it as natural energy can feel shocking, like encountering a truth you forgot. There's another mechanism at play: containment. In Jungian psychology, the ability to contain emotion without acting it out unconsciously is a sign of maturity. Containment creates charge. Think of it as a held voltage. When a woman doesn't immediately discharge her energy through nervous talking, through over-explaining, through trying to win you over, the energy stays in her field. It becomes palpable. And you feel it as aura. This is why you can sense it even across a room. Because what you're sensing is not a message, it's a state. A state has mass, it has consistency, it has rhythm. And your nervous system is a rhythm detector. It syncs with coherent rhythms. An awakened woman's inner rhythm is less chaotic, so your system begins to sync. That syncing can feel like chemistry. Now let's address the title directly. Why spiritually awakened women have intense sexual auras. The Jungian answer is because spiritual awakening, when it's real, reunites the split psyche. It reconciles the opposites: spirit and body, innocence and desire, tenderness and power, love and boundaries. That reconciliation releases trapped libido. And released libido doesn't always look like horniness. Often it looks like grounded radiance. But there's a warning Jung would include: not all intensity is awakened. Some intensity is inflation. Spiritual inflation happens when someone identifies with an archetype, believes they are special, chosen, higher. That can create a kind of magnetic charisma, but it is unstable and eventually collapses. True awakening is humble. It's rooted. It doesn't need an audience. And because it doesn't need an audience, it becomes more attractive to those who are starving for authenticity. So how do you recognize the difference? You feel it in the aftermath. Repressive intensity leaves you anxious. Inflated intensity leaves you confused. Integrated intensity leaves you clearer. Even if you're deeply drawn, that clarity is a signature of wholeness. Jung would say, what comes from the self tends to organize you, not shatter you. Now, let's tighten the psychological loop. If you're watching this and thinking, okay, but what exactly creates that aura? We're going to break it down without turning it into a checklist. Because the moment you turn living energy into a trick, you lose it. Still, there are inner movements that consistently produce this outward effect. First, withdrawal of projection. An awakened woman stops projecting her unmet needs onto men. She stops expecting a man to heal her wounds, to validate her worth, to rescue her from loneliness. This changes everything. Because when she interacts with you, she's not grabbing at you, she's meeting you. And being met is erotic because it feels like equality, not extraction. Second, integration of the shadow. She faces the parts of herself she used to hide: anger, desire, envy, grief, ambition, without collapsing into them. This gives her depth. Depth creates presence. Presence creates aura. People can sense depth because depth slows you down. It makes your reactions less automatic. Third, ownership of instinct. She stops treating her sensuality as either dirty or as a weapon. She treats it as life energy. That creates a calm confidence around the body. And calm around the body is rare because many people live in constant self-surveillance. Fourth, embodiment. Real spiritual work returns you to the body. Jung paid attention to dreams, symbols, sensations. Embodiment means her sexuality is not in her head. It is in her breath, her posture, her eyes. And embodied energy is felt, not explained. Fifth, boundaries. This will surprise you, but boundaries intensify aura. Because boundaries create container. Container creates charge. If everything is open and available, there's no tension, no mystery, no sacredness. Awakened women often treat intimacy as sacred, not as a moral rule, but as a psychological truth. That sacredness generates the numinous charge. And now we arrive at something even deeper. An awakened woman often awakens the anima in men. Not by trying, but by being. She activates a man's relationship to his own inner life. That's why men sometimes feel not only desire, but inspiration, fascination, even fear. Because the anima is both the bridge to the unconscious and the force that destabilizes a rigid ego. A man who has avoided emotion may feel overwhelmed around a woman who carries integrated eros. He may call it crazy chemistry, but psychologically, it's his psyche waking up. This is also why men can become obsessed, not because she cast a spell, because she triggered an archetypal pattern, the longing for wholeness. The unconscious wants integration. When you encounter someone who symbolizes integration, you feel pulled, not just to them, but to what you could become. Here's another retention truth. Your attraction can be a clue about your own inner work. Jung would say, watch what you are fascinated by. Fascination reveals the missing piece. If you're captivated by a woman's awakened aura, ask yourself what part of you is asleep, what in you is starving for life, what in you has been repressed, because attraction is often the psyche pointing you toward your own growth. But let's not get abstract. Let's make it visceral. When a woman has integrated her psyche, she doesn't need to constantly signal. She can sit in silence without trying to fill it. She can hold eye contact without aggression. She can flirt without dependency. She can be sensual without begging. That is exactly what people feel as intense. It's the intensity of someone who can hold energy without leaking it. Think about the difference between a candle in the wind and a flame behind glass. The candle flickers, fights, asks to be protected. The flame behind glass is steady. It warms the room. It doesn't plead. It simply is. That's the difference between sexual energy that is trying to get something and sexual energy that has become a stable life force. Jung also spoke about the union of opposites, conjunctio. In alchemy, which Jung used symbolically, the conjunctio is the sacred marriage, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, spirit and matter. When a woman begins this inner marriage, she becomes less split, and less split means more power. Power becomes erotic because eros is drawn to wholeness. You can call it aura, but it's basically the psyche recognizing conjunctio in human form. Now, I'm going to say something that might challenge you. Many people think a spiritual woman should be pure, soft, harmless. Jung would call that a one-sided ideal, another mask. Real spirituality includes the dark, not evil, but depth. It includes the wild, it includes the honest, it includes the instinctual. A woman who is only light is often disconnected from her shadow, and disconnection creates fragility. But a woman who has walked through her shadow becomes anchored. She has been to the underworld of herself and returned. That return makes her gaze heavier, her presence quieter, and that quiet weight is intoxicating. Because your unconscious trusts someone who has faced themselves, even if it doesn't know why. Another detail. Awakened women often stop performing femininity. They become feminine from the inside out. They don't move to be seen, they move because they inhabit their body. They don't speak to be chosen, they speak because they have a center. This subtle difference changes how the body reads them. Performance creates tension, inhabiting creates flow. Flow is sensual, flow is alive. And now, a critical point. An intense sexual aura is not always comfortable. It can trigger men's shadows. It can trigger control issues, insecurity, possessiveness, fear of abandonment. Why? Because coherence in another person exposes incoherence in you. An awakened woman doesn't have to insult you to challenge you. Her presence alone becomes a mirror. Jung would say, the unconscious reacts when it is confronted with the self or with a strong archetypal image. Some men respond with devotion, others respond with sabotage. Not because she did something, but because their psyche is being pressured to evolve. So if you're a man listening to this and you feel that pull, don't just chase it. Understand it. Ask what it's awakening in you. Because if you chase it like a trophy, you'll destroy the very quality that attracted you. The aura comes from her wholeness, not from your conquest. And if you're a woman listening to this, the Jungian message is the opposite of what culture sells you. You don't create aura by adding more. You create aura by removing what splits you, removing shame, removing the need to be approved, removing the inner war between spiritual and sensual. The moment you stop making your desire a problem, your life force returns. And when life force returns, people feel it. But we must be careful. Integrating sexuality does not mean indulging every impulse. Jung would emphasize consciousness. Integration means you can feel desire without being possessed by it. You can be erotic without being compulsive. You can be sensual without being reckless. That mastery is not repression, it's sovereignty. And sovereignty is magnetic. Let's go one more layer deeper. There is an archetype Jung described indirectly through symbols, the Great Mother, not the stereotype of a mother, but the archetypal feminine principle of creation, nourishment, destruction, renewal. When a woman is spiritually awakened, she often reconnects to her creative source. Creativity and sexuality are siblings. They come from the same river. If she channels her libido into creation, into purpose, art, meaning, her energy becomes richer. People can sense richness. Richness feels erotic because it's abundance, and the psyche is drawn to abundance. This is why you'll sometimes feel that an awakened woman is dangerously attractive even if she isn't trying. Because she's not just radiating desire, she's radiating life. And life is the most seductive thing in the universe. Now notice what your mind is doing right now. It wants to turn this into a formula. So if she does X, she becomes magnetic. That's the ego again. Jung would smile at that and say, the psyche cannot be reduced to mechanics without losing its soul. Aura is not an algorithm, it's an emergent property of integration. So instead of chasing a formula, understand the principle. The more a person becomes whole, the more their energy becomes concentrated. The more concentrated their energy becomes, the more others experience them as powerful. The more powerful they feel, the more erotic the field becomes. Not because they are trying, but because their libido is no longer fragmented. And here's the final loop, without giving you a conclusion, but leaving you with a charged question that keeps you thinking long after the video ends. What if the sexual aura you crave in others is actually the part of you that wants to awaken? What if your fascination is your psyche begging you to integrate what you've been avoiding? Because in Jung's world, nothing that grips you is random. Fascination is a message. Attraction is a symbol. And when a spiritually awakened woman walks into a room and your entire system lights up, maybe it's not just about her, maybe it's about the wholeness your unconscious recognizes and wants for itself.